Hey guys! Tonight we're heading into the misty jungles of ancient Mesoamerica. The air is thick and heavy, the kind that makes your skin feel like it's already raining. Somewhere in the distance, a frog lets out a throaty croak. You're barefoot, walking through warm earth that squelches slightly beneath your feet, and every leaf around you looks as if it's holding its breath. This is the land of the ancient Maya, and they're waiting for the rains. Not just hoping, they're predicting. With frog songs and smoke and a few calculations so sophisticated that modern meteorologists might blink twice. Of course, you probably wouldn't last a day here. Between the humidity, the mosquitoes, the spiritual responsibilities, and the complete absence of iced coffee, your modern comforts wouldn't stand a chance. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking along a dirt path just outside a Maya village. It's evening, and the air feels like something is about to change. The kind of evening where the light turns syrupy and gold, where insects hum with a kind of intensity that suggests they know something you don't. Villagers around you move slowly, deliberately. They pause often to look up at the sky, sniff the air, or crouch near puddles. Nobody says it aloud, but they're all thinking the same thing. Will the rains come soon? Because in this world, rain isn't just water. It's life, food, prophecy, and punishment. Without it, the corn won't grow. Without corn, the people won't eat. And without people, well, who's going to perform all those ceremonies? You pass an elderly man sitting cross-legged by a low fire. He watches the smoke rise and fall in lazy curls, then tilts his head like he's listening to music. You try to follow his gaze, but he isn't looking at anything. He's feeling the air pressure shift. You wonder how many years it took to learn to read weather like a living book. One young boy walks ahead of you, barefoot and wide-eyed. He stops suddenly and gestures to a toad squatting under a stone. The creature croaks once, then again. The boy grins. "Soon," he says softly, and keeps walking. This is your first hint. Frogs matter here. More than just background noise, they're seen as messengers, living instruments of the gods. The Maya believed their songs could predict the exact start of the rainy season, and not just vaguely, down to the day. You reach the edge of a field. It's been cleared and tilled for planting, but there's no corn yet. Just rows of dry earth and the anticipation that soon this place will hum with green. A farmer stands nearby, his hands on his hips. He doesn't glance at you. He's watching the sky. A single cloud forms, stretches, then drifts apart.
He doesn't look disappointed. If anything, he looks thoughtful. You're struck by how the whole village seems to move in time with the climate. No one is rushing. No one is panicking, but everything, every little glance, every sniff of the air or tilt of the head is part of the slow countdown to the first rain. Historians still argue whether the Maya had formal meteorological rituals or if these were more instinctive, passed down through generations of sky watchers and frog listeners. Probably both. It's the kind of culture where science and belief wove together like threads in a hupil. And here's something oddly comforting. This deep connection to rain was totally normal. Nobody thought it strange to watch frogs and decide, yes, it will rain next Tuesday. In fact, it was expected. The gods were watching, and the people had to respond, not with forecasts on a screen, but with corn offerings, incense smoke, and a deep, quiet listening. One detail that might surprise you, the Maya didn't just wait for frogs to croak, they paid attention to how they croaked. The timing, pitch, repetition, even the direction the sound came from. In some communities, this turned into elaborate local frog calendars built on years of careful listening. Imagine that. Instead of checking your phone, you'd crouch beside a marsh and strain your ears toward amphibian chatter. And sometimes, that chatter was oddly accurate. There's a bit of a fringe theory, not widely accepted, but still floated among a few scholars, that frogs respond to changes in barometric pressure before storms in ways that are incredibly subtle, yet measurable, if you're the type of person who's tuned into frogs your whole life. So as you settle into this night with the Maya, just remember, you're surrounded by people who can tell the weather with their ears, their noses, and their bones. No apps, no graphs, just 1,000 years of tradition, one croak at a time. And speaking of time, the breeze has changed, a little cooler. The leaves overhead give a single shudder. Somewhere to your left, a second frog joins the chorus. You pull your cloak a little closer, feeling the moisture in the air settle on your skin like mist. It's going to rain soon. You don't need a priest to tell you that. The frogs already have.
The boy with the bright eyes is back, only now he's carrying a shallow clay bowl filled with water. You trail him across the edge of the village as he weaves through brush and stone paths, stopping just short of a dense patch of reeds. The bowl trembles in his hands, not from fear, but from anticipation. He kneels, places the bowl gently on the ground, and waits. You crouch beside him. The air is thicker here, the sound muffled by foliage and a wet hush that seems to hang between branches. Then it happens. A single frog hops from the reeds, lands beside the bowl, and lets out a croak so loud and sudden you nearly tip over. The boy grins again. "First one this year," he whispers. It's more than just a frog call. It's a declaration. This is no coincidence. You're learning now that the Maya kept track of frog behavior with an almost sacred seriousness. Croaks were recorded, literally, in some places. Murals and glyphs found in sites like Copan and Bonampak depict frogs near glyphs for rain, time, and fertility. Some even show frogs seated like nobles, puffed up and smug, as if they know something you don't. And honestly, they kind of do. The Maya didn't worship frogs per se, but they revered them as messengers between worlds. The croaking sound wasn't just an animal call. It was thought to echo the underworld, the watery realm from which rain and life emerged. The moment a frog sang, it meant that the door between realms had cracked open, just a little. You might think this is all charming folklore, but here's the kicker. Frog vocalization patterns are actually linked to climate cycles. Not just any frogs, though. Species like Hyla stauferi and Leptodactylus melanonochus, which respond to shifts in humidity, pressure, and even moonlight. That's right. The moon's phase affects how loudly frogs sing. And guess who noticed that? Yep, the Maya. They weren't just listening to frogs, they were listening at the right time, in the right places. By combining frog calls with lunar observations and seasonal memory, they created a living system of weather forecasting. Historians still argue whether this constituted a formalized meteorological science or something more folk-based and decentralized. But then again, does it really matter? It worked. You're crouched so long, your legs start to ache, but you don't move. You're absorbed. This frog symphony isn't just ambient noise anymore, it's a signal. And the boy next to you, he's got the entire timetable memorized. He tells you that the frogs near the marsh croak earlier than the ones by the temple, that the tree frogs are the most dramatic, but the fat ground frogs are more reliable, that if they all go silent after croaking together at sunset, it means the storm is 2 days away. You blink. 2 days? How could anyone know that? But the boy shrugs, like it's just obvious. You ask him where he learned this, and he taps his head, then points to the sky. There's another layer to this you haven't seen yet. The Maya didn't rely on frogs alone. They were just one part of a broader system of ecological cues. And that's what you're beginning to notice. There's a quiet network here, woven into the trees, the soil, and the skies. A passing elder wrapped in a cloak that smells faintly of smoke and cornmeal smiles down at you and says, "The frogs sing when the gods listen." You try to imagine what that would feel like, to live in a world where frogs weren't just part of the scenery, but sacred instruments, little prophets croaking in code. Nearby, a group of children mimic the frogs, puffing their cheeks and leaping over puddles. It's a game, sure, but it's also practice, a way of training their ears and instincts for the rhythms of their home. Not everyone plays, though. Some of the older teens are quiet, focused, already watching the frogs with priest-like solemnity. They'll be the ones to carry this system forward, even if they never write it down. At the edge of the reeds, a man stands ankle-deep in muddy water. He holds a staff carved with spiral patterns and listens, motionless. This is a chilan, a kind of spiritual interpreter, not quite a priest, not quite a meteorologist, but somewhere in between. He turns his head slowly toward the hills, then mutters something under his breath. You catch only 2 words, frog wind. Later you'll learn this refers to a specific breeze, warm, scented faintly of wet leaves, that often arrives before the season's first big storm. The Maya claimed it carried the breath of the frog gods, exhaled to wake up the sky. Is that poetic? Of course, but it's also eerily precise. Modern studies have shown that pre-storm winds do indeed carry unique chemical signals, earthy, metallic scents released from soil microbes. The Maya didn't need labs. They had noses. And maybe you do too. You close your eyes and inhale. There it is, that faint smell of damp stone, of leaves softening in the humidity, of something ancient rising from under the earth. The frogs croak again, this time in unison, like a chorus. The boy nods solemnly. "Tomorrow," he says. You glance at the sky, just a few wisps of cloud, but you believe him, because you've heard it now too. The soft chorus, the frog song, the whisper from the underworld that rain is on the way.
The smell of copal hits you first, sweet, sticky, and smoky. It coils in the air like silk, drifting from a smoldering chunk of resin placed carefully atop a cracked ceramic bowl. You're standing now in the center of a small field on the village's edge, the corn not yet planted, but already honored. This isn't just incense, it's a message. You watch as a woman kneels before the smoke, hands cupped together in prayer. She sprinkles a few kernels of corn into the rising plume. It sizzles slightly, the kernels catching in the soft amber glow. Nothing loud, just a soft crackle, like tiny fireworks far away. It's one of many rituals tied to rain here, and this one is all about timing. The Maya didn't just plant when it rained. They invited the rain with offerings, and those offerings had to be precise. Too early, and the gods wouldn't listen. Too late, and the corn wouldn't grow in time. So they listened to frogs, and once the frogs had spoken, they made smoke. Copal, a resin tapped from native trees, was the ceremonial default. It produced thick white smoke, said to please the rain gods and cleanse the air of unwanted spirits. But also, possibly, just maybe, it added moisture to the local atmosphere. Not enough to make clouds, but enough to mimic the first signs of rain. Some scholars suggest this might have created a feedback loop. Ritual smoke in the air during frog season, drawing more amphibians out of their damp hiding places, triggering more croaks, and so on. It's speculative, of course. Historians still argue whether this was intentional behavior manipulation or just a happy side effect. But either way, it worked. The woman finishes her prayer. She pats the earth once, then twice, and rises without a word. A few children behind her mimic the gesture. Palms together, smoke rising, corn cracking softly. You feel it now. This isn't just agriculture, it's choreography. Across the field, another man crouches beside a stone altar, barely 2 hands tall. It's decorated with carved ears of corn and what looks suspiciously like a frog face. His smoke bowl is deeper, and he's added what smells like crushed chili to the resin. The smoke stings your eyes, even from here. You ask someone nearby why he uses chili. The answer is gentle, matter-of-fact: to wake the sky. Apparently, the rain gods, especially Chalk, with his serpentine axe and wild eyes, needed nudging. Soft clouds were fine, but storms needed spice. You glance up again. The clouds are still wispy, but maybe, just maybe, they're a little darker now. Or maybe it's your imagination. Though around here, the line between imagination and invocation is slippery.
The symbols aren't random. They echo glyphs found in Maya codices, ancient books made of bark paper. One codex, the Madrid Codex, includes a whole section on rain prediction, complete with smoking gods, corn bundles, and tiny frogs drawn beside black storm symbols. It's an entire language, and you're starting to pick up on it bit by bit. The soft curves of a corn swirl, the triangle of a frog's eye, the way smoke curls into the shape of a rain god's breath. It's beautiful, hypnotic, and a little absurd. But there's also something deeply comforting in how ordinary people here take part in celestial mathematics using only resin, frogs, and memory. No telescopes, no spreadsheets, just this: a handful of corn, a whiff of smoke, and a croak in the dark. A young girl passes by carrying a folded cloth bundle. She opens it briefly to show you what's inside. Miniature figurines made of clay and bone. Little frogs, some with corn kernels inside their bellies. She tells you they're charms. To make the corn listen to the rain, she says. You don't ask for clarification. It makes perfect sense. In Maya belief, corn isn't just a crop. It's a relative, a spirit, sometimes even a deity. And rain? Rain is its old friend, its dance partner, its muse. They need each other. And these little clay frogs? They're matchmakers. There's one more thing happening here that you can't ignore. Every now and then, someone walks the edges of the field dragging a smoking bundle of leaves. It smells slightly bitter. Not copal this time. This one is different. You learn that it's pome, another type of incense used specifically for rain work. It's harder to find and has to be harvested during a certain moon phase. This morning, someone hiked 4 hours to bring it back. Why? Because the frogs were singing. That was the sign. So now, everyone's moving, lighting fires, making smoke, whispering blessings, dragging herbs in circular patterns like weather clock hands. You exhale, slow and deep. The ritual doesn't ask much from you, just stillness, just attention. You sit now beside the field as the smoke drifts higher. The frogs continue their calls in the distance. The sky darkens by a shade or two. You could swear you hear thunder, but maybe it's just your stomach. Someone offers you a roasted maize cake. You eat it slowly, staring into the haze. It's quiet, but not empty. The smoke carries whispers, songs, and half-hoped prayers, all of it riding upward, toward the waiting clouds.
You wake before dawn, or maybe you never quite fell asleep. It's hard to tell in a place where night doesn't exactly mean darkness. The stars are so dense they feel like gravel poured across the sky, and the frogs, they never stop. Now you're on a raised stone platform at the edge of the village, shoulder to shoulder with a group of men and women who've barely spoken since you arrived. They're watching the stars. Not casually, like you'd glance up to see if it might rain later, but with serious ritual intensity. One priest mutters to another, pointing to a faint red shimmer near the horizon. You don't recognize the constellation, but that's fine. They do. You're here to witness, not explain. These are sky readers, calendar keepers, time whisperers. And to them, the stars don't just tell stories, they give instructions. The Maya tracked multiple calendars at once, and this is where it gets deliciously complicated. There's the solar calendar, Hab, the sacred 260-day Tzolkin, and longer cycles like the Baktun. But when it came to predicting rain, they zoomed in on a specific handful of constellations, rising and setting in sync with agricultural seasons. Tonight, they're looking for the Pleiades, what some Maya communities call Tsab, the rattlesnake tail. When it reappears in the eastern sky just before dawn, it means the rainy season is near. But it's more than just a marker. It's a warning. Because once it appears, there's only a brief window to finish certain rituals and begin planting. Miss it, and you risk offending the gods, or worse, missing the best rains. You crane your neck and squint. The sky feels enormous here. The stars don't twinkle, they pulse, steady and quiet, like breathing. And you realize something odd. Everyone's faces are tilted upward, but their eyes aren't just scanning the sky. They're remembering. You can almost feel it. Layers of stargazing from hundreds of seasons past, pressing gently against the present moment. It's not superstition, it's science. Or rather, it's both. The Maya calculated the solar year with shocking precision, 365.242 days to be exact, just a hair off from modern atomic timekeeping. They knew when to expect equinoxes, when Venus would rise, and when to prepare for rain. But they didn't separate weather from myth. They didn't have to. Historians still debate whether specific constellations were tied to frog behavior or if that's a later interpretation, but what's certain is this. They observed patterns most people today never even notice. You're handed a folded piece of bark paper. It's soft, fibrous, painted in tiny, careful glyphs. You don't know what it says, but you feel the weight of it. One of the priests leans in and says, "It remembers more than we do." Suddenly, there's movement. Someone spots the first shimmer of the Pleiades, low and sleepy in the sky. A hush falls, even the frogs seeming to pause for breath. Then, a gentle tapping sound, stone on stone. One of the elders begins a slow chant, rhythmic and low, and others join in. You don't understand the words, but they roll over you like waves. Next to you, a boy holds up a thin reed and points it at the constellation. He's tracking it against a notch on a wooden slab. It's a kind of sighting tool, handed down through generations. No lenses, no numbers, just shaped wood, memory, and clear skies. One man notes the angle and nods. He marks it with charcoal on a shell. 5 days, he says. 5 days until the big rain. 5 days to prepare the cornfields, smoke the sky, and listen for more frogs. You glance around. No one seems rushed, just aware. Someone places a bundle of dried corn leaves beside you. To burn when the clouds gather, they say. It reminds them, the clouds, the gods, the ancestors, whoever is listening. You reach for the bundle and feel the rough texture beneath your fingers. There's something inscribed on one of the leaves, the swirl, a dot, a line that loops back on itself. It could be a name, or a date, or just a memory. In the distance, a soft rumble. It might be thunder, or maybe someone rolling a gourd across the stone floor. Either way, no one flinches. This is what they've been waiting for. As the sun starts to rise, soft and orange and full of promise, you see smoke already curling from 3 different fires below. Someone whispers, "The frog sang true," and you believe it. You walk down from the platform slowly, barefoot on dew-wet stone. The air smells different now, not wet exactly, but open, expectant, like the sky has cracked a smile. You're standing now in front of a low, mossy shrine tucked into the curve of a hill, half swallowed by vines and thyme. At first glance, it might just look like a pile of weathered stones, but the boy from earlier waves you closer and points out the carved shapes hidden beneath the moss. They're frogs, lots of them. Some squat and bulbous, others lean and agile. A few have comically large eyes, mouths open mid-croak. One even has tiny painted dots where the warts would be. Each one faces outward, toward the rising sun. This is the Toad Shrine, you're told, or more formally, a sacred altar to the Aj Kuhul Chak, the divine force that speaks through the frogs. It isn't a temple in the grand sense, no soaring staircases or blood-soaked rituals here. This is a whispering place, a listening post. You crouch near one of the figures and notice its open mouth is filled with something dark and shiny. A priest nearby sees your interest and nods. "Obsidian dust," he says, "so the spirit can see the storm's reflection." You blink. That's unexpected. But then again, so is this entire worldview where frogs aren't just animals, they're oracles. According to some regional traditions, frogs were believed to carry water in their bodies, not just physically, but spiritually. When they croaked, they were thought to be warning the earth that rain was already on its way. Their voices were part prediction, part invitation. Historians still argue whether these shrines were actively used in seasonal rituals or were more symbolic, placed to mark watery places and remind passers-by of the god's presence. Either way, the reverence is clear. Someone hands you a small clay offering shaped like a frog. It fits perfectly in your palm. For luck, they say, and for rhythm. Rhythm. You tilt your head. The elder beside you taps 2 fingers gently on a hollow gourd. A beat, then another. A child echoes him, adding a little click with her tongue. Then another joins, and just like that, a rhythm grows, slow and playful, not loud, just enough to fill the space between frog croaks. You sit down beside the shrine as more villagers gather. No one leads, there's no speech. Just drumming fingers, soft whistles, and the low, rolling croak of the frogs all around you. The sound feels ancient and new at once. Somewhere in the mix, a woman begins to hum. It's not a song you recognize, and the melody wanders gently, like a river following the path of least resistance. The kind of tune you'd hum if you wanted the clouds to notice you. You feel yourself relaxing into it. The rhythm, the smell of moist stone, the growing light. It's hypnotic, almost cozy. Another offering is placed beside yours. This one has a frog perched on a cornstalk, its mouth open as if singing. There's laughter from one of the children as it topples slightly. Someone sets it upright and sprinkles a few grains of amaranth at its feet. You ask a nearby youth what the frog figurines mean. He shrugs and says, "They remember when we forget."
He's right. These frogs aren't just symbols of rain, they're markers of memory, tied into seasonal cycles, planting rituals, and oral traditions so deeply that losing them would mean forgetting how to live with the sky. You lean back against a warm stone and listen. More frogs now. Their calls echo from 3 sides, some high-pitched and squeaky, others low and slow like distant drums. Together, they form a soundscape more alive than any playlist. Someone pulls a leaf from a nearby bush, and crushes it between their fingers, releasing a sharp, peppery scent. This one blooms just before the frog songs begin, they say. It's their trumpet. Even the plants are in on the pattern. You realize now that predicting rain wasn't a single event. It was a collage, a living mosaic of animal sounds, smells, skies, and memory. Every piece mattered, and frogs were the chorus leaders. You look again at the shrine. The frogs stare back, their mouths frozen mid-song. You wonder how many rains they've summoned over the centuries, how many prayers they've listened to in the dark. One priest stands suddenly and tosses a handful of red petals into the air. They scatter in the wind like slow-motion confetti, some landing on your shoulder. He nods at you. The gods remember your scent now, he says, and walks away. Okay, that's either very sweet or deeply alarming. You decide to take it as a compliment. The sun is higher now. Warmth starts to rise off the stones, turning the shrine into a sleepy oven of sound and scent. But no one leaves. They linger, quiet and barefoot, listening to frogs like they're tuning an ancient radio. And you realize you're part of it now. You've stopped trying to interpret the croaks. You're just hearing them, feeling them, letting the rhythm of old stone and sacred amphibians lull you into a quiet, humid trance. You exhale, deep, long, uncomplicated. The frogs croak again. The shrine hums back. And somewhere in the canopy above, the clouds begin to gather.
You duck into the small, low-roofed structure nestled beside the temple's western edge. There's steam seeping through the cracks in its wooden frame, curling into the air like the breath of some sleepy animal. A soft chant drifts from within, so low and slow it could be mistaken for the wind through wet leaves. Someone waves you in, barefoot, smiling, eyes slightly unfocused. "Come sweat," he says. You hesitate, then push through the flap of damp cloth that serves as the door. Inside, it's like stepping into the belly of the earth, warm, musky, and dark, lit only by a low clay brazier in the center. Resin smoke rises from it in lazy swirls, mingling with the thick scent of herbs and wet stone. The walls are earthen, the floor scattered with smooth river rocks. This is a temazcal, a traditional Maya sweat lodge, used for purification, healing, and dreaming. The priest sitting across from you gestures for you to sit, then ladles water over the hot stones. A wave of steam erupts, and the room becomes a cloud. Your skin prickles immediately. You breathe in through your nose and feel something shift behind your eyes. This, you learn, is part of the rain ritual too. Not just smoke and croaks and shrines, but sweat and breath and vision. Here, the Amen, the healer, the dreamer, enters altered states to hear messages from the gods, especially the rain god Chak. The croaks of frogs aren't just heard outside, they're carried inward, replicated, imagined, understood from within. Someone next to you begins humming, soft, slow, nasal, not a melody, but a rhythm, like the pulse of a heartbeat slowed by humidity. Historians still debate whether temazcal visions were tied directly to forecasting rain, or whether they were more spiritual maintenance, cleansing the soul to stay in tune with the world's cycles. But in practice, there's no sharp division here. Cleanse the spirit, clear the air, welcome the storm. The priest pulls something from a small gourd and tosses it into the brazier. It crackles, releasing a bitter scent that makes your nose twitch. You don't recognize it, but someone nearby whispers, "Dried snakeskin." Okay, that's unexpected. Apparently, in certain villages, snake offerings were used during drought prayers. not because the Maya worshipped snakes in the modern sense, but because serpents were linked with water, transformation, and lightning. And what is lightning, if not the sky cracking open in a hiss and a flash?
More chanting now. Someone's whispering a frog call. You realize it's an imitation, impressively accurate. The tone, the pulse. A priest beside the fire repeats it back in a slightly different rhythm. It's a kind of call and response. You begin to understand, even within the sweat lodge, frogs are present, not physically, but in sound, in mimicry, in spirit. A woman across the circle begins to sway, not dramatically, just gently, back and forth like a stalk of corn in the wind. Her eyes are closed, her hands rest on her knees. She's murmuring something. You lean closer. Croak in the dark, croak in the sun, bring the river, bring the run. It's not quite a song, it's not quite a prayer. It's somewhere between a lullaby and a weather forecast. You let your head fall back against the wall. The steam dampens your hair and sweat trickles down your neck. Someone drums lightly against a gourd. Tap, tap, pause, tap. Then silence. Then again. It mimics the way a frog calls from one side of the swamp, waits, then hears an answer from across the reeds. You close your eyes. The heat is intense now, but not oppressive. It wraps around you like a story. You feel your breathing slow. Your thoughts go soft around the edges. You wonder just briefly what it would be like to be a frog, to spend most of your life listening, to live underground until the air thickens with promise, and then emerge, song first. The room feels quieter now, or maybe just deeper. Time slows inside steam. And then through the haze, you hear a real croak, not an imitation, a loud, sharp burst from somewhere outside the sweat lodge. Everyone freezes. No one speaks. Then the priest speaks one word. Yes. You're not sure what he means. Yes to the frog? Yes to the storm? Yes to the question no one said aloud? Either way, everyone breathes again. There's relief in the exhale. You open your eyes. The smoke has cleared slightly. The chanting stops. The gourd goes still. The priest ladles water one last time. The steam rises, one final offering. Then he nods, and the group begins to file out quietly, respectfully, like stepping away from a dream before it finishes. You follow, blinking in the soft morning light. The air feels different, cooled slightly, or maybe just changed by contrast. You glance up. Clouds on the horizon. Not dark yet, but building. You smile. The frogs knew.
You're walking now through a part of the forest no one really talks about in town. Not because it's forbidden, but because it's sensitive, private. The kind of place you're only shown after you've listened for a while, spoken little, and made a frog out of clay without rushing it. This grove isn't marked with stones or shrines. No ceremonial fires, no drums, no lingering smoke. Just trees, tall ones with pale bark and wide, whispery leaves. You wouldn't even know it was sacred if the boy hadn't grabbed your wrist and whispered, "Shh, this is where the trees speak." You'd laugh if it weren't for how serious he looks. And when you do finally listen, when you stop thinking and just stand there, you hear it too.
The leaves move in odd rhythms, rustling against each other not in waves, but in murmurs. Tiny, staggered flutters, like someone shuffling cards across the canopy. Then, one soft chirp. A frog? Maybe. Or a bird. But then two more answer, and you feel that slow, grounded certainty forming in your chest. This is another kind of forecast. The Maya believed that nature told them things before the sky ever did. And while frogs were among the most famous messengers, they weren't the only ones. Trees, birds, even insects, the entire landscape was filled with premonitions if you knew how to read them. You follow the boy deeper into the grove. The air cools here, not cold, but dappled and breathable. You pass trees whose roots twist like braids, vines hanging like lazy scribbles from branch to branch. Suddenly, he stops and points. A tiny bird, round-bodied with golden speckles, perched quietly on a bent reed. Rainbird, she sings when the clouds decide. You listen, but the bird stays silent. The boy nods. Not yet. Historians still argue whether these natural cues were tracked methodically or if the knowledge was passed down more intuitively through stories and repetition. Either way, it worked. A certain flower blooming, a cluster of bees shifting hives, the smell of wet clay in the morning. Every detail mattered. You crouch beside a fallen log and run your fingers across the bark. It's damp, not with rain, but with humidity thick enough to cling. A few small beetles scuttle underneath, and nearby, a cricket chirps out a long, slow note. The boy taps the rhythm gently on a tree trunk, mimicking it. This whole place hums with layered signals. And in the middle of it all, the frogs croak again. Not loud, just enough to remind you that they're still here, listening, waiting. A woman joins you in the grove, holding a bundle of dried leaves and a handful of round stones. She places a few at the base of one tree and whispers something into the hollow where two branches meet. You can't hear the words, but the tone is gentle, less like a prayer and more like a greeting. She explains with a patient smile that certain trees remember years with bad rain. Their leaves twist slightly differently. Their bark sheds late. One tree, she says, bloomed sideways in the year the sky cracked open early. It happens when the clouds feel impatient. You're beginning to see the pattern here. Forecasting isn't about certainty. It's about relationship between frogs and steam, between stars and corn, between tree leaves and the way people walk in the morning.
You start to notice how even the birds pause between calls, listening for something unseen. How the breeze shifts directions when no one's watching. How the people who live closest to these rhythms never use words like if. It's always when. When the rain comes. When the frogs croak. When the trees whisper. At the heart of this grove, there's a clearing, a circle of soft moss underfoot, where no one steps unless invited. You're asked to wait at the edge. The boy goes in alone, crouches low, and hums one long note, like a slow exhale in tune with the breeze. Then he places something on the moss, a tiny frog figurine you recognize. It's the one he made yesterday, shaped with stubborn fingers and smudged with charcoal. He doesn't say anything as he returns, just nods. The frog's job is done. Now it's the tree's turn to answer. You walk back slowly through the grove that somehow feels more alive now than it did before.
You notice how your own breathing has slowed to match the leaves above, how your feet press more gently into the ground, how silence has become a kind of language. Back in the village, someone is lighting a new fire, but the smoke drifts differently today. Less frantic, less sharp. It smells like time stretching. You sit beneath the tree at the edge of the grove, knees to your chest, chin tilted toward the sky. Still no storm, but the frogs croak again, and the leaves flutter back, as if responding in kind.
You're kneeling in the shade beside a stone wall, watching a priest do something so quietly peculiar that it takes you a moment to realize you're witnessing science. Just the ancient kind, woven with myth, wrapped in patience. He holds up a thin string stretched between his fingers and runs it slowly through the humid air. Dangling from it are two split seed pods, small, pale, and trembling ever so slightly in the breeze. The man frowns, then nods. "More water in the air today," he mutters. You glance at the setup again. It looks like a child's toy, but you're wrong. It's a weather tool. Primitive? Sure, but accurate in ways you didn't expect. This is part of a Maya tradition of measuring the immeasurable. How do you gauge humidity without glass or gauges? Here's how. Threads soaked in honey, gourds filled with ash, the weight of cracked seed pods, and the way smoke rises or doesn't. The Maya didn't need forecasts. They had clues. You watch as another priest dips a feather into a bowl of fine maize flour, then flicks it gently into the air. The way it drifts tells him something you'll never understand just by watching. It's not about the flour, it's about the air, its weight, its mood, its thickness. You start to notice these little experiments everywhere now. Children spinning leaves to see which side lands face up after a wind gust. Old women cracking bits of dry clay in their palms to see how they split. Men leaning over fire pits, noting how much smoke clings to the ground before rising. It's not superstition, it's a form of measurement. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly measured in a quantitative sense or simply observed with layered sensory cues. But at this point, you realize it doesn't matter, because what you're seeing is just as meticulous, just as careful, and maybe more beautiful. You crouch next to a young boy who's lining up tiny pebbles in the dirt. You ask what he's doing. He doesn't look up. "Marking the air," he says. You wait, hoping for more. Eventually, he points to a line of darker pebbles. "These are for the heavy days." Heavy days?
He shrugs. When the wind feels like it has teeth. You sit with that for a moment. You've felt that kind of wind before, but you've never named it, never counted it, never tracked it in pebbles. That's the magic here. The Maya didn't just watch the sky. They translated it into patterns, into texture, into ritual. A woman walks past, holding a palm frond woven into a cone shape. She dips it in water, then lets it drip slowly onto a stone slab. The rhythm of the droplets, she tells you, mimics rain. And sometimes, if you do it just right, the sky will try to match you. You ask if that's true. She gives you a look that says, "Of course." Then she smiles and says, "Sometimes the clouds are just lonely." You think about that as she walks away, still dripping her rhythm onto the stone. Nearby, a cluster of elders gather around a small basin of water. One of them stirs it slowly with a corn husk, then watches how the ripples spread. A breeze hits the surface, and the pattern breaks. They murmur together, nodding. You can't hear the words, but the conclusion is clear. Something's changing. You glance up at the sky. It's still mostly blue, but there's a softness to it now, like it's thinking about something. You've never thought of clouds as hesitant before. The frogs agree. They croak once, short, loud, then nothing. Everyone pauses. Then someone, almost ceremonially, unrolls a woven mat and places it on the ground. You recognize this. It's the meeting mat, a space for decisions, interpretations, collaborative memory. This isn't just science, it's community science, the kind that happens out loud, across generations. People gather. A priest lays down 5 objects: a corn cob, a frog figurine, a string, a cracked shell, and a folded leaf. He places them carefully, each one representing a clue: humidity, fertility, sound, wind, and scent. Then he says nothing, just waits. One by one, people speak. The frog croaked early. The air felt sticky. The smoke curled low this morning. A certain beetle hasn't surfaced yet. The leaves near the river are hanging strangely. You watch as each observation is laid down like a bead in a necklace. The thread connecting them is invisible, but strong. No data sheets, no percentages, just consensus. Finally, the priest nods. 3 days. 3 days until the first hard rain. Not sprinkles, not mist, the kind of rain that makes the corn grow with a sound. And everyone believes him, not because he's guessed, but because the world has spoken. Through threads and frogs and flower and leaf and silence. You exhale. The air feels heavier now. The wind smells different. And somewhere in the reeds, another frog sings. Just once. But it's enough. You've hiked to the base of a hill now, led by a group of villagers who don't speak much, only enough to say follow and quiet, and don't forget to duck. The jungle path grows tighter as you ascend, vines tugging at your arms, the sound of insects rising and falling in layers like waves against an invisible shore. At first, you're not sure where they're taking you. Then you hear it, a sound low and long, like thunder caught in a tunnel. It's not thunder, though. It's something stranger, less sharp, more guttural, the kind of sound that makes you want to crouch, even though there's no real danger. A boy beside you grins. "Rain beast," he whispers. Oh, that's comforting. But the others nod, as if this is perfectly normal. You reach the hilltop, and that sound, whatever it is, echoes again. It seems to come from the trees or the stones, or maybe from inside the earth itself. The villagers gather at a semicircle of upright stones. Each one is carved with spirals and faces, long tongues lashing from mouths, lightning bolts etched near bulging eyes. They're stylized depictions of Chak, the Maya rain god, but also something more elemental. You learn that this place is where the sound of rain is heard before the storm begins. It's not metaphorical. The Maya believed certain echoes in the landscape, amplified by natural acoustics, signaled the movements of spirits or beasts responsible for storms. You step closer to one of the stone markers. It's warm, not from the sun, but as if it's storing something. You tap it softly. The resulting tone is hollow and deep, like striking a drum underwater. This is no ordinary hill. It's a listening place. You crouch beside a young girl who cups her hands to her ears and presses them to the stone. You try it too. The surface hums faintly, and beyond that you hear the strange distant bellow again, longer this time. "What is it?" you ask. She shrugs. "The thing that brings the rain." You get the sense that it's not about whether such a creature exists in the physical world. It exists in sound, in meaning, in memory. That's enough.
Historians still argue whether references to the rain beast in Maya oral tradition were meant to describe weather systems, spiritual entities, or both. What's known is that sound, especially deep resonant sound, was seen as a messenger, not just from the gods, but of them. And this hill? This place may have been a natural amphitheater, capturing certain atmospheric conditions just before storms. Low pressure, distant thunder refracting, the earth humming with anticipation. You lie back in the grass, letting your head rest against one of the flat stones. The jungle above buzzes lazily. You feel your heartbeat slow. Then the sound comes again, closer.
A long, low, rumbling croak that doesn't belong to any frog you've ever heard. A few villagers make the sign of the corn spiral over their hearts. Someone whispers, "He's coming." The girl beside you doesn't seem scared. She's smiling. She looks up at the sky, squints thoughtfully, and says, "He always brings the first mango blossoms." You smile too, though your skin tingles. It's not fear, it's awe. Something about this place blurs the line between sound and sensation, between frogs and thunder. One elder walks to the center of the semicircle and raises a conch shell to his lips. He blows, softly. The resulting tone is surprisingly quiet, like a frog's last breath before sleep. That's when you hear the third voice join in. Not the conch, not the distant echo, but something behind you, deeper in the jungle. A voice like wind in a cave, or a boulder groaning in a dream. You don't turn around. You don't have to. The priest lowers the conch. He looks pleased. "The beast is hungry," he says. "He'll drink soon." And what he means, of course, is the sky. Everyone begins to descend the hill again, slowly, purposefully. No one says much. The echoes have done their job. There's no need to explain. You stay back just a moment longer, listening. The frogs are still singing, not loudly, but with rhythm, with a kind of musical timing that fits the jungle perfectly. You notice how some croaks rise in tempo just after the deep echo returns. It's almost like a conversation. You press your ear to the warm stone again. This time the sound that greets you is softer. A pulse, a breath, a promise. You rise to your feet. The sky is grayer now, still patchy, still not quite sure of itself, but darker than it was. And overhead, the mango trees begin to shake, even though the wind has not yet arrived.
You're back in the village now, standing over a long strip of bark paper unrolled across a table. It's covered in tiny dots, careful lines, and what looks like frog tracks drawn with loving obsession. "This is the croak map," the priest says, tapping one of the symbols with a knuckle. "It's not finished, of course. It never is. The croak map is what it sounds like, a record of where frogs sing, when they start, how they change. But it's more than just a chart. It's a calendar, a landscape, and a weather log, all sketched in patient, rhythmic memory. Each section is marked with hand-drawn glyphs indicating ponds, marshes, and seasonal changes. Besides some of the frog symbols are tiny spirals. Those mean the croaks were windy. Others have raindrop shapes. And then there are a few with a wide, jagged line through the frog, silence. You learn quickly that silence is just as meaningful as song. Sometimes a pond will go quiet. When that happens, people listen even harder. You follow the priest as he walks to a small shrine near the edge of the village. Beside it is a flat slab of limestone. Carved into it are dozens of small frog icons, each one placed near a symbol for a field, a family name, or a celestial sign. "This is last year's," he says. "We'll make a new one soon." You kneel beside the stone. One frog has an open mouth, its tongue lolling toward a rain glyph. Another is curled into itself, encircled by flames. That was the drought, someone explains quietly. Historians still debate the exact methodology behind these croak maps. Were they ritual memory tools, weather records, astrological aids? Probably yes to all of it. The Maya didn't compartmentalize. Everything was connected.
You follow a group of teens as they head toward the wetlands just before dusk. Each carries a rolled mat and a small clay whistle. One by one, they sit at the edge of the water, feet dangling into the muddy shallows. Then they wait. You do the same. And soon enough, the croaking starts. One frog begins, a long, low tone like a question asked in the dark. A second replies, higher-pitched with a warbling trill. You don't understand the language, but you can feel it. This is a pattern. A girl beside you nods, then blows gently into her whistle. The note is soft, dry, not quite a frog imitation, but close. From across the pond, another whistle answers. This is how the croak map gets made, not in silence, but in gentle mimicry. Listening, responding, marking the moments when the frogs say, "Now, now it begins." A boy holds up a piece of bark with lines scratched across it. He makes a mark next to a tiny drawing of a reed. "That one," he says, pointing toward the reeds where a particularly loud frog has taken up residence. Later, someone else will copy this mark onto the official map, adding to the village's collective understanding of the season. It's not just data, it's devotion. The frogs are louder now, and you notice how the sound moves, not in chaos, but in waves, from north to south, from marsh to pond to well. Someone's tracking it all. The villagers call this chuj ton, the speaking of water, a phrase that means both frog song and weather whisper. It carries weight. You can't say it without feeling reverent. One elder murmurs, "The frogs don't tell you what you want, they tell you what's true." You look up at the sky again. It's gone from hopeful blue to uncertain gray. The kind of sky that holds back, not because it lacks rain, but because it's waiting for permission. And who gives that permission? The frogs. You stay at the water's edge long after the teens leave. You watch the ripples as the frogs hop from stone to lily pad, their throats inflating like tiny balloons, their croaks weaving together in harmony and dissonance. You begin to recognize the rhythm. A pause, a reply, a silence, a burst, a chorus, and through it all, the village listens. Not passively, but actively, through charts, marks, memory, and song. They're building a croak map not just for this year, but for the generations to come. You dip your fingers into the pond. The water is warm, still. But above you, the wind has started. The frogs croak again, this time even louder.
You're standing now at the top of a stone hill, barefoot, a bit breathless from the climb, and staring at the long, flickering tail of smoke curling into the sky. There's no ceremony happening, no chanting, no priests, just a quiet woman in a wrap skirt and sun-bleached shawl feeding dried herbs into a shallow clay dish. The smoke isn't heavy or frantic, it's slow, like it's taking its time to find the sky. This is a signal. You've learned by now that smoke isn't just for rituals, it's a message system. In Maya villages, especially in the highlands, people still send weather invitations to the clouds by lighting signal smoke when the frog songs reach a certain pitch. It's not superstition, it's a cue. The idea is simple. If the air is already shifting, if the frogs are singing, if the wind is curious, then smoke gives the sky something to follow, like blowing dust into a room to see where the drafts are. You sit beside the woman and watch her work. She places a handful of corn husks over the embers, then sprinkles crushed petals on top. The flames hiss softly. The smoke turns sweet and faintly golden. You ask what the petals are. Rainflowers, she says. They grow when the gods start walking. You try to imagine that. Deities pacing the sky, sniffing for smoke, waiting for the frogs to sing. Behind you, someone adds a sickened smoke dish, this time with damp moss pressed into the coals. The result is thicker, more earthy. The wind lifts it higher. And then, something curious happens. The smoke bends. Not sharply, but distinctly. It curves west, away from the usual path it took earlier in the day. The woman frowns thoughtfully, nods once, and adds a handful of what smells like burned cacao shells. She turns to you. They'll come from the low valleys tonight, she says. They, the clouds, the rain.
This moment isn't a guess, it's a reading. Like watching leaves stir on a still day and knowing a dog will bark 2 seconds later. Historians still argue how widespread this smoke signaling practice was, whether it developed regionally or was a standard technique across Maya city-states. But archaeological evidence of soot rings, scorched offering pits, and mural depictions of incense rising in tandem with storm clouds all point to a deep link between combustion and prediction. You learn that certain types of smoke have their own voices. Copal smoke is straight and white, an invitation. Resin and moss smoke is gray and heavy, a plea. Cacao smoke, used only when frogs have sung for 3 consecutive nights, is almost musical, said to carry requests for steady, not violent, rain. Today is Cacao Day, and right now, the air is full of it. The frogs begin again, this time from a lower ridge. One starts, 2 follow, and within seconds, the whole edge of the jungle is croaking like a haunted xylophone. You've learned not to smile too hard, not to treat it like background noise, because this is the moment the smoke is waiting for. The woman stands and raises a palm frond, fanning the smoke upward. It spirals cleanly, confidently now. The breeze is no longer tugging at it. It's holding it. The clouds, you notice, have gathered more closely over the western hills. A bird swoops low and doesn't flap its wings again. The air feels stretched, pregnant. You ask, is this the moment? She shakes her head. No, this is the whisper before it. That lands differently. A whisper before the rain. A moment when frogs and fire and flowers all lean toward the sky and hope someone's listening. You stay a little longer, fanning gently, adding corn husks when asked. The smoke rises, twists, bows, and sometimes stumbles, but it keeps going. A boy runs up the hill and hands the woman a tiny clay tablet. She reads it, nods, and hands it to you. It's covered in notches and tiny scratches. One line stands out. 3 frog glyphs in a row, followed by a swirl and a raindrop. She taps the swirl. This one means they answered. You ask, the frogs? No, she says, squinting at the darkening sky. The clouds. The frogs croak again, this time louder than ever. A wild, crackling rhythm, bouncing from hill to jungle to village. And just as you start to speak, the woman raises her hand. She says, listen. So you do. You listen. And in that moment, the first distant roll of thunder arrives. Not close, but clear. And coming.
You're sitting beneath a low awning now, the kind woven from palm thatch and propped up with weathered branches. It's just enough to keep the damp air off your shoulders as you rest, legs stretched out on warm stone. The clouds are moving in, slowly, as if unsure of themselves, but the frogs are confident. Their croaks have gone from sporadic to full-throated. The woman from earlier told you this would happen. When the frogs begin overlapping their calls, interrupting one another, it means the sky is listening closely. You wonder if that's superstition, then immediately remind yourself that here, superstition is just a word for pattern you haven't noticed yet. And right now, a new pattern is forming. The smell. It hits you softly, then all at once. The unmistakable, comforting scent of rain about to fall. That deep, earthy perfume known across the world, petrichor. You didn't expect to notice it here so clearly, but it rises through the warm air like incense for the soul. You breathe in, slow and deliberate. It's not just wet. It's more textured than that, like sun-baked clay with a splash of cool memory. A young girl sits nearby, crushing leaves between her palms and holding them under her nose. You ask what she's doing. Trying to smell the kind of rain, she says. The kind of rain? She nods. There's the soft kind that feeds the corn, the fast kind that ruins the beans, and the loud kind that scares the snakes. You blink. She explains that different rains smell different before they come, and the Maya knew how to tell them apart. The warm, sour note of fast storms, the sweet moss scent of long, steady drizzles, the crisp, mineral snap of a lightning-bearing squall. Here, even the rain had personalities. Historians still debate whether ancient Maya classifications of rain were purely poetic or practical, but oral records suggest they genuinely understood microclimates and seasonal rainfall patterns in detail that still amazes modern researchers. And the nose played a big part. You watch as a few villagers dip cloths into basins of water mixed with crushed herbs, then wave the fabric in the air gently. Not for cooling, for catching, scent catching. They sniff, shake their heads, try again. Eventually, someone says, "It's the gentle one." People smile.
Apparently, that's the good rain. The one that soaks in deep, doesn't flatten the corn, doesn't run away too fast. The kind that stays the night. More smoke rises from the hill now, slower, less urgent, as if everyone already knows it's coming. The frogs quiet, just briefly. You feel the hush like a blanket, a waiting, a listening. And that smell, it's stronger now. You breathe in and imagine the wetness forming in the clouds, the particles suspended in the air, the ozone slipping into your lungs like an old memory. Nearby, an elder breaks a piece of bark in two and holds it to your nose. It smells oddly sharp, peppery even. "Smell of the first drop," he says. The bark catches it first. You hold the bark and close your eyes. In the dark behind your eyelids, you can see the rain forming, beads collecting on broad banana leaves, splattering onto stone paths, soaking into soil that's waited weeks for relief. But for now, it's just smell and sound and breath. And frogs, still croaking, still steady. Another woman dips her hand into a gourd of oil and rubs it behind her ears. The scent is citrusy, mixed with something like pine. You ask what it is. "Protection," she says. "Sometimes the sky gets confused and forgets who we are." It's an odd thought, but it sticks with you, needing to remind the sky that you're one of the good ones, that your crops are ready, that your house roof is patched, that your clay frogs are in place. You look around. Everyone's doing something small, checking buckets, tying mats tighter, wiping stone idols clean, sweeping doorsteps. Nothing rushed, nothing panicked, just preparing for something that's already halfway here. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic, it's just lived. The smell of rain is stronger now. It clings to the wooden beams. It settles into your hair. It reminds you of nights long ago when your grandmother said, "It's coming," even before the wind blew. And somehow, she was always right. A small child holds out their palm, testing the air. Nothing yet. But the smile on their face says it's close. You tilt your head back and sniff one more time. There it is.
That moment when the scent deepens, when it's no longer the memory of rain, but the whisper of its footsteps on the road. The frogs croak again, and behind them, something else begins to speak.
The village square is a little livelier now, but not in the loud, chaotic way of a festival. It's a different kind of gathering. Rhythmic, patterned, expectant. A slow-motion celebration with no music but the frogs, no banners but the soft flags of wet laundry catching the humid breeze. You're pulled toward the center of it by the smell of roasted maize and something faintly herbal. A wide ring of villagers has formed. Inside it, barefoot children leap and squat, puffing their cheeks and croaking with theatrical intensity. Frog dances. They're mimicking the songs, the hops, the bulging eyes of the amphibians now singing in stereo across the fields. But they're not just playing. This is ritual. Each movement means something. A high jump? That's an invitation for clouds. A slow, crouching wiggle? That's to soften the wind. The puffed cheeks, done in time with the croaks from the pond, are a way of syncing the human world with the animal one. One child has painted her arms with spiral lines in red clay. Another wears a headband woven with green leaves, flopping gently as she leaps. The entire group dances in a circle, forming waves, then breaking apart like raindrops on hot stone. You sit beside an elder who watches closely, nodding in time. "When the frogs begin to dance," he says, "the gods remember how." "Remember how to what?" "To dance too," he grins, "with rain." Nearby, someone places 3 bowls at the edge of the circle, one with roasted corn, one with beans, and the third with small, carefully arranged flowers floating in water. Offerings. They're not grand, they're not dramatic, but they're precise. Each item was chosen because it speaks to the gods of rain in a language older than glyphs. Historians still argue whether these smaller ceremonies, especially child-led ones, were widespread traditions or more localized family practices. But pottery and murals from across Maya lands show frog dances etched in motion. Tiny feet raised, arms lifted, smiles stretched wide under exaggerated frog masks. A girl near the edge of the ring suddenly breaks into a soft chant. The rhythm is simple, repetitive, almost lullaby-like. The words are hard to catch, but you feel the meaning in your chest. Something about the earth opening. Something about asking for water not with desperation, but with grace. She sings, and the other children match her tone, not in unison, exactly, but in harmony, like frogs overlapping without canceling each other out. You find yourself tapping your knee in time. Another elder walks into the center, this time carrying a small clay figure, a frog with corn silk draped over its back. He places it down gently and steps back, bowing. The dancing shifts. The children slow their movements, then begin a pattern of bows and gentle steps, as if walking across water. Their croaks grow softer, more breath than voice. A woman with silver hair sprinkles ashes in a circle around the figure, a boundary, or maybe a compass. She hums something deep, lower than the children's chant, closer to thunder than song. Then, silence. No one moves. Even the frogs outside the square seem to pause.
A heartbeat. Then 2. Then croak. Just one. Sharp and certain. Then the children laugh. Not loudly, but with relief. The kind of laugh that happens when someone you've waited for finally shows up. The elder nods. Chak heard. You look up at the sky.
It's gray now. Not moody, but ripe, full. The wind stirs, not strong, but enough to scatter a few petals. The frogs resume their chorus, more insistent now. One child stops dancing and begins placing stones at the base of the clay frog. Small ones, each with a different color. You ask why? So it doesn't float away when the rain comes, she says. The gods like to play tricks. You smile. Of course they do. You realize that this ceremony isn't about control. It's not about commanding the sky. It's about reminding it. Reminding the clouds that the people are ready, that the earth is ready, that the frogs have done their part. And now, it's time. Someone brings you a bowl of warm maize porridge. You eat quietly, watching as the children file out of the circle, heads bowed, still humming. The air smells sweet again. The breeze cools. A single droplet lands on your arm. You glance up. One more. Then two. Then the frogs croak again, wild, triumphant, overlapping without fear. The clay frog glistens in the dim light, and above it, the clouds begin to dance.
You're inside one of the village kitchens now, a dark, low-ceilinged space full of smoke and quiet bustle. It's late, but no one is sleeping. Pots bubble gently over embers. Someone's grinding corn on a stone slab. Another person stirs herbs into a thick paste. There's no sense of rush, but everything has purpose. You're told tonight is special. Because once the frog dances are done, and the offerings are given, and the first drops have kissed the dirt, it's time to feed the gods and the corn. You sit cross-legged near the back wall, watching as two women unwrap bundles of soaked leaves. Inside, small, pale tortillas, warm and soft, each one folded with a single sprig of chaya, a ritual food, not for you, not for the villagers, but for the sky. You can't ask for rain if you don't feed the thing it's meant for. The thing. It takes you a second, but she's not being vague. She means the corn. To the Maya, corn isn't just a crop. It's a being, a relative, a spirit. You don't just plant it. You care for it, talk to it, feed it with smoke and music and stories, and occasionally with food of its own. Tonight, they're giving it tears. That's what the dish is called. Ishik Khan, or tears of the corn woman. Small drops of corn dough mixed with bitter herbs, shaped to look like seeds, then steamed until they glisten. You taste one when offered. It's soft, earthy, and slightly salty, like a dumpling that forgot to add joy. But it's not for you, it's for empathy. The idea is to show the gods that the corn has already begun mourning, and when the corn cries, the sky often cries back. You hear someone whisper, "She's hungry this year." She, meaning the corn spirit, the field mother, the one who lies curled beneath the milpas, waiting for thunder to wake her up. Historians still argue how literal these corn person rituals were, whether they reflected deep spiritual conviction or metaphorical agricultural storytelling. But the gestures remain, preparing food for a crop, showing rain spirits that the land is not indifferent, but waiting, trembling, hopeful. Across the room, a small clay statue of the corn woman stands tucked beside a cooking jar. She's no taller than your hand, but her presence is enormous. Her face is smooth, serene. One of her eyes is painted with a single blue tear. A child sets a tiny frog figurine beside her feet.
"No one cries alone," she whispers. The moment lands like a stone in a still pool. You don't speak. Outside, the frogs continue, Not wild this time. Steady, rhythmic, supportive, like they're holding a note. Then a deep roll of thunder. Closer now. You feel it in your feet. The women nod as if checking off a box. That was expected, right on time. They begin carrying the small leaf-wrapped bundles outside, one by one. They place them at the edge of fields, on windowsills, beside wells. Not buried, not hidden. These tears are meant to be seen by spirits, by animals, by clouds. You follow one woman to the outskirts of a cornfield. She places her bundle at the base of a stalk just starting to sprout and says softly, "Now they can see you're not alone." She's talking to the corn again. She doesn't look at you, but she gestures for you to do the same. You kneel beside a younger plant, unsure of what to say. The ground is soft. The air is heavy. You whisper something, maybe thanks, maybe encouragement. You're not even sure. But when you place the little food bundle beside the stalk, something shifts. Another breeze, another distant croak. And the very first real raindrop lands on the back of your hand. It's cold, but not harsh. Another follows, and another. They patter on the broad corn leaves, bounce off the bundles, ripple across the fields like a breath being exhaled at last. You look up. The clouds are no longer waiting. They're here. And the frogs sing louder than ever, not panicked, not warning, just joy, just harmony. The corn doesn't cry now. It listens. And you, kneeling in the dark, with leaf-wrapped offerings and damp skin, listen too.
The rain has started, not in a grand cinematic downpour, but in soft threads, like a song that tiptoes into the chorus instead of crashing through the first verse. It spatters gently on rooftops, kisses the stone paths, and pools quietly in the upturned palms of frog statues. You're standing in a milpa, a Maya cornfield, though calling it a field doesn't quite capture it. It's a symphony of life. Corn, yes, but also beans winding up stalks like serpents, squash vines sprawling low with fat leaves, herbs tucked in at the borders. This is not monoculture, it's ecosystem. And tonight, it's getting its first lullaby of the season. The wind moves gently, just enough to sway the tassels of the tallest stalks. The frogs don't pause. If anything, they get louder now, joyful, triumphant. You're not alone in the field. Scattered among the rows, villagers sit cross-legged, unmoving. Each holds a small gourd or cup, not to drink, but to sing. That's right. This is where the rain songs happen. You're invited to join. You're handed a gourd with 3 tiny corn kernels inside. It rattles softly when you shake it. Less of a sound, more of a suggestion. A woman nearby begins humming, low, nasal, nearly inaudible. Another joins her, then another. The melodies don't match, but they fit. They overlap like frog calls, imperfect and perfect all at once. The rain continues to fall, just enough to coat your hair, to blur the edges of your vision. The songs are old, older than the milpa, older than the paths that brought you here. Some are only a few syllables long, repeated, repeated, repeated. Others have full verses that sound more like weather patterns than lyrics. One woman chants softly, "Corn stands tall when the sky bends low. Beans curl fast when thunder grows slow." You can't tell if she's inventing it or repeating it from memory. It doesn't matter. These are planting songs, growth songs, rainkeeper songs.
Historians believe these melodies may have helped coordinate work, syncing tasks across rows, but also served as blessings. Singing to the plants wasn't symbolic, it was interaction. You sit back on your heels and shake your gourd. A soft rattle, a nod to the soil, to the gods, to the frogs. A young boy next to you sings in a thin, bright voice. His tune is nonsense, he admits, but they understand anyway. He gestures to the corn. They don't need perfect words, just rhythm. Someone starts tapping a stone with a stick. Tuk, 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 tuk. And others follow suit on gourds, roots, knees, even the earth itself. A collective percussion line slowly emerges, dreamy and slow like water moving underground.
The frogs shift their tone slightly, as if joining in. Or maybe they were leading all along. And then the thing happens. The thing the villagers had promised. The corn moves. Not dramatically, not like a dancer, but unmistakably, the tallest stalks sway in unison, not with the wind, but with the rhythm. It's hypnotic, like the plants are listening, like they're remembering what to do. A few villagers begin walking between the rows, whispering as they go. Each stops to crouch and touch the earth, then stands again with the whispered phrase, "She wakes. He's thirsty." They're listening. You find yourself doing the same. You speak, quietly, to a young sprout that wasn't there the day before. It's barely more than a green shoot, but you talk to it like an old friend. You say, "Welcome back." And then you hear it. A new frog, louder than the others. Its croak isn't from the pond or the trees. It's from beneath the stones at the edge of the milpa. The villagers freeze. "That's him," someone says softly. Him, the watcher frog, the old one, the throat under stone. A figure from Maya belief said to sing only when the earth is satisfied. His voice, deep and full like wet drums, marks the moment when the rain has been accepted. You feel it, the shift. The storm has passed, barely more than a hush, but it was enough. The milpa is wet. The seeds are waking. The frogs have spoken. The watcher has answered. The villagers begin to rise slowly. No one speaks. There is no applause, no final chant. The music ends in the way dreams do, with silence that feels more full than sound. You walk back to the village with the others, hair wet, fingers muddy, heart soft. One last croak echoes across the night. You look back. The corn doesn't wave goodbye. It listens. Still.
You've returned to the edge of the village now, where a wide stone circle surrounds a cenote, one of the deep freshwater sinkholes that dot this land like the sky has left fingerprints in the earth. The surface of the water is still, too still. It's so dark and perfectly flat that you almost mistake it for obsidian. You're told this is where the echoes come from. It doesn't make sense at first. Cenotes are water sources, not weather tools, right? But here, they're both. You step closer, leaning slightly over the rim. Your reflection greets you, shadowed by low clouds and firelight flickering behind you. A priest kneels nearby, eyes closed. He dips his fingers into the water and flicks droplets toward a carved frog perched on the cenote's edge. "It listens," he says. You assume he means the frog. He corrects you gently. "No, the echo listens." You sit beside him. His gourd is filled not with water, but with small stones, smooth, round.
each marked with a spiral. One by one, he drops them into the cenote. Plop, plop, plop. The sound is strangely satisfying, oddly precise. The splash is light, the echo delayed by just a second, then reflected back, soft, filtered through centuries.
You ask what he's doing. Counting the silence. That's not a metaphor. He means it literally. Between each drop, he listens. If the echo returns quickly, it means the air is dry, he says. If it lingers, if it's slow to bounce and softer in tone, that's the rain talking back. You listen too. Plop. Silence. Silence. Plop. The frogs don't croak here. It's too still, too sacred. Their calls form the background now, off stage. This moment belongs to stone and water. The Maya believed cenotes were entrances to the underworld, Xibalba, but also listening chambers, places where messages could be sent and received, where gods might answer in echoes or not at all. Historians still argue whether cenotes were used for meteorological readings or were strictly spiritual sites. But in practice, the line is irrelevant here. When the gods whisper in water, does it matter what name you call it? You learn that each echo is read differently. A high, short echo? Winds will shift. A long, muffled one? Rain by morning. No echo at all? Stay inside. Tonight, the priest hears a deep return, slow, rounded, like thunder remembered through fog. He smiles. She's full, he says. You think he means the sky. He stands, raises his arms once toward the clouds, and walks away without another word. You remain, entranced by the stillness, by the way your own breath feels like an intrusion. A child approaches with a hollow reed and a shell. She taps the shell once, then holds the reed above the cenote's surface and hums. The sound enters the water like a whisper entering a dream. You listen for its reply. The echo doesn't come back in sound, but in ripple. A single, perfect ring spreads outward across the cenote's surface, vanishing into the night. The girl smiles. That's the kind echo, she says. It means the clouds will be soft. You ask where she learned that. She shrugs. From the frogs. Of course. You glance again at the carved frog by the rim, its mouth slightly open, its eyes forever watching the sky above and the depths below. There's something powerful about this moment. No lightning, no spectacle, just stone, water, and the pause between sound and answer. You close your eyes, and in the dark, you hear it. A single croak, faint, but echoed perfectly from somewhere deep. Not from the pond, from beneath you. The cenote replies.
It's past midnight now, but the village is awake. Not loudly, but with purpose. You're inside one of the older houses, a rectangular space built of stone and packed earth, where a handful of elders are seated cross-legged around a low table. Laid out before them are rows of stones, beans, and carved tokens. At first glance, it looks like a game, a round of ancient checkers played by torchlight. But the air is far too focused, too reverent for games. This is sky math, rain arithmetic. They're calculating. You watch as one of the elders lifts a stone marked with 4 lines and places it next to a tiny clay moon. Another nods and marks something into a strip of bark paper using black charcoal. They're working on what's known, at least in a loose modern sense, as the fire-water table. a way of blending celestial observation with earthly clues, the brightness of the moon, the behavior of the frogs, the smoke shapes, the smell of bark, the timing of thunder. It's beautiful and baffling, like a weather formula written in poetry instead of numbers. You learn quickly that this is no solitary act. Predictions are not owned, they are agreed upon. One man says, 3 more days of soft rain. Another shakes her head. No, 5. The croaks repeated in 8s, not 7s. A heated whispered discussion begins, not argumentative, but full of ancient logic, each voice backed by decades of listening. Someone places a frog token near a stone marked with a spiral glyph. The tadpoles are already swimming, she says. Too early for only 3 days. You blink. Tadpoles? Apparently yes. The speed of tadpole appearance is factored into their equations. The faster the frogs lay eggs, the more confident the elders are in a longer, sustained rain pattern. Historians still debate how formalized this system ever was. Did the Maya have a true rain calendar, or was it an evolving system of environmental math? The truth lies somewhere in between. Sophisticated knowledge woven with folklore and deeply lived experience. You watch as they measure moonlight next, placing a polished shell in a bowl of water and noting how its reflection distorts when wind stirs the surface. Sharp edge, one says, means more wind. You would never have noticed. The water looks the same to you, but to them, it's a textbook.
They pull out a set of palm leaf strips etched with cycles. One for rain, one for corn growth, one for fire offerings. The strips are flexible, meant to fold and overlap, like a Maya version of a slide rule. You watch them align the symbols. The moon glyph touches the frog glyph, then the cornstalk, then the smoke spiral. When they all meet, when they click together just right, the room grows still. One elder touches the center point and says, "Tomorrow is the hinge." No one asks what she means. They all nod. So do you. It's not about a specific hour. It's the moment when everything tips. The sky decides, the rain commits, the plants listen more closely than even the frogs. A hinge is not dramatic. It's subtle. A shift in weight, a breath. A quiet footstep that crosses from maybe to yes. Someone lights a small fire in the center of the room, and the calculations stop. No more tokens, no more alignments. Now, it's time to burn the numbers. Literally. The palm strips once read are placed in the fire, not out of secrecy, but out of ritual. The message has been delivered. It doesn't need to be saved. You watch the smoke rise, slow and easy. Someone adds 3 drops of honey to the flame. You're told this softens the math, makes the message sweeter for the gods to hear. Outside, the frogs are quieter now, maybe resting, maybe listening in their own way, where maybe they too know that the hinge has been reached. You lie back on a woven mat and stare at the smoke pattern rising. It swirls in time with the memory of voices. 3 days, 5 days, hinge day. None of it is linear. Everything is circular, seasonal, rhythmic, predictable only if you live in tune. Someone hums a melody, one of the same ones you heard in the mirpa earlier. The tune bends slightly now, shaped by the math. And that's the thing. The Maya didn't separate knowledge from beauty. The moon was not just a number, it was a glow. The frogs were not just data, they were music. The sky was not just observed, it was known. And tonight you've seen that knowing in full motion, folded in whispers, lit by embers, echoed by frogs. You close your eyes, and even in the dark, You see the symbols clicking into place.
You're back near the edge of the wetlands now. The sun just starting to rise again in a pale wash of orange and gray. The rain has left its mark. Earth that was once dry now gives just a little under your feet. And the frogs have taken full advantage. They're everywhere. Hopping, resting, half submerged in puddles, and most importantly, laying eggs. And that, apparently, is your next task. You're joining a group of children whose job it is to count tadpoles. They greet you like it's the most normal thing in the world. One girl hands you a large, curved leaf folded into a kind of scoop. You catch them gently, she says. Not too many, just enough to see what kind of rain this is. You're still not quite sure how this works, but you follow her toward the stillest part of the water, where reeds bow low and frogs blink slowly from the mud. She dips her leaf scoop into the water and lifts it carefully. A few tiny dark shapes wriggle inside. Tadpoles, no bigger than a fingernail, all eyes and tail. She examines them closely, then counts aloud. 7. Another boy catches 5. A third child shouts 10, but then counts again and sighs. Only 8. This isn't a game, though they laugh like it is. Each number matters. You learn that in some Maya villages, tadpoles are not only seasonal indicators, they're part of the rain wisdom system. The earlier they appear after the first croaks, the more sustained the rainy season will be. If they hatch too fast, the water may dry up before they grow legs. If they hatch slowly, the rains may last longer than expected. There's a term for this, kuhu wenet, roughly the living measure. The frogs sing, but the tadpoles confirm. One of the elders arrives and records the counts with charcoal on a smooth, flat gourd. The numbers aren't plotted into graphs, but aligned into spirals, each spiral representing a cycle, each dot a life. You add your count. 6. The elder nods thoughtfully. A steady season, she murmurs. Not greedy, not shy. It's the kind of phrase you've come to understand, part reading, part prayer.
Historians have found references to tadpole-watching rituals carved into temple walls and painted onto codices, often linked with moon phases or early planting ceremonies. Whether scientific, spiritual, or symbolic, the fact remains, the Maya saw life at every level as part of a network, a system, a shared pulse. And in that system, even a single tadpole mattered. The children release the ones they've scooped, letting them drift back into the still water. One boy stays behind a little longer, whispering to his catch before letting it go. You don't ask what he said. Some things aren't translated, they're just felt. You walk the water's edge and begin noticing the patterns yourself, where the eggs cluster, how the tadpoles gather at the warmest corners, which frogs are watching, motionless, half buried in silt. You get the sense that the frogs are watching you just as closely. One child points to a patch of foam clinging to a reed. They laid more here, she says. That means they think the rain will stay. You ask, the frogs think? She gives you a look. Who else would know? Fair point. You crouch beside a thick clump of grass and find a tiny frog no larger than your thumb. It doesn't jump away. Instead, it blinks at you slowly, as if to say, finally catching on? You smile. Maybe you are. A new breeze arrives, cooler than before. It sends ripples across the water and stirs the reeds. The frogs pause. Then one begins again, softly, sleepily, as if singing not to summon rain, but to welcome it home. You glance at the children gathering their tools, leaf scoops and gourd slates tucked under their arms. Same time tomorrow? Asks one to the others.
They all nod. Because this isn't just a one-time count. It's a season-long story, read one tadpole at a time. You watch them go, feet splashing in shallow puddles, voices soft. Behind you, the water glimmers. The frogs sing once more. And somewhere beneath the surface, 100 tiny tails flick in time.
The village path leads you to the edge of a shallow lake, the kind that looks like it's always been half asleep. The storm from earlier has passed, but the memory of it lingers in the mud. You kneel at the water's edge, beside a man digging gently into the shoreline with a polished stick. He gestures for you to help. "This is where we read the old rains," he says. You look around. There are no books, no scrolls, no carved stone tablets here. Just soft earth, wet from the first true storm of the season. But as he pulls back a thin layer of muck, a darker band of soil is revealed underneath. "See," he says, pointing to the change in color. "This was the hungry rain, many years ago." You realize this is mud reading. The Maya, like many ancient cultures, observed and recorded layers of earth as a form of historical memory. Soil preserved stories. Years of drought, floods, even strange shifts in the timing of frog calls. It was all there, pressed between layers like pages in a soggy, living book. He shows you how to track a layer by its density, its smell, its resistance to touch. Another elder arrives and lifts a clump of dirt to her nose. She sniffs, nods, and says, "This one had too much lightning." You blink. "Too much lightning?" She grins. "You can smell it. Burnt air leaves behind hot clay." Whether that's scientifically verifiable or not, you suddenly understand something deeper. Here, knowledge isn't separated by category. It's felt, interpreted through sensation, memory, story. A boy nearby scrapes a bit of the dark soil into a small bowl. He explains, "This is for the field markers. We press it onto stones so the corn knows its place." You're not entirely sure how that works, but then again, you've learned not to doubt it. If frogs can predict the weather, why shouldn't corn remember where it's happiest? You move along the lakeshore, where others are digging and whispering. Each patch of soil they turn tells a slightly different version of the past. This was the year the frogs croaked too early. This was the year they never came. This was the year the rain returned before we even asked.
You notice they speak of years not by numbers, but by frogs and floods, smells and silences. That's how time is marked here. In natural events, emotional echoes, and the small creatures that carried the messages. Historians have long puzzled over the layered soil patterns found at Maya ceremonial sites. Pits filled and refilled, lined with ash, sometimes flecked with tiny bones or frog figurines. Were they offerings? Environmental logs? Ritual reenactments of old rains? Yes and. Always yes and. You sit back on your heels and dig a little yourself. Your fingers sink into soft brown, then hit a patch of cool gray. It crumbles differently, feels more delicate. You hold it up. It smells faintly metallic. The man beside you sniffs once, then nods. That was a stubborn year. The rain came late. The frogs didn't trust it. You look out across the lake. Frogs line the far bank, barely visible but loud as ever, croaking now in full force, not anxious, not cautious, confident. One woman walks slowly into the lake up to her knees and dips a handful of water onto her head. To remember, she says. You're told this part isn't about prediction.
It's about learning, about humility, about honoring the fact that sometimes the frogs get it right, and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, you don't blame them. You listen harder. That's what the mud teaches, that you learn as much from the misses as from the hits. You ask how far back the memories go, how many rains they can remember this way. An elder shrugs, as far back as the silence. You don't ask for clarification. You let that idea sit, like sediment in water. Back at the edge of the field, children begin smearing bits of remembered soil onto the stones that mark the planting rows. Not in neat lines, but in spirals, dots, smudges, patterns that only they understand. The man hands you a piece of rock, streaked with charcoal and flecks of clay. "Mark yours," he says. "This will be your planting sign." You kneel beside a border stone, smear a line across its surface, then add a single swirl, half on instinct, half from the memory of that frog beneath the shrine. You lean back. The soil smells like rain, and old breath, and something waiting. The frogs croak again, and this time their voices are echoing from the very layers you just touched.
The rains come fully by nightfall, not in a sudden cascade, but in slow, certain curtains. You're inside a quiet house now, watching through a slatted window as the drops string down from the thatched roof, beating on leaves, bouncing in shallow bowls set out to catch the first real water. No one runs for cover. There's no scramble, no surprise, only stillness. This was what they were waiting for. Outside, frogs sing like an orchestra now, so layered, so full, you'd swear they rehearsed. The rhythm isn't frantic. It's not even celebratory in the way you imagined. It's assured, like the sound of people walking through a doorway they knew would open, eventually. In the center of the room, a woman wraps the last of the clay frogs in cloth, one by one. She's putting them away, not because they're no longer needed, but because their work is done. Each frog is kissed gently on the head before being placed into a woven basket. You're told they'll stay there until next season, unless, of course, something unexpected happens. And if it does, well, they'll be listening. You lie down on a woven mat, the air thick with rain-washed scent, dirt, wood smoke, crushed leaves, and petrichor. So much petrichor. It's as if the earth has exhaled for the first time in weeks. One of the elders enters quietly and places a small clay bowl beside the doorway. It's filled with water and cornmeal. For her, she says, nodding to the outside, to thank the sky for remembering. You close your eyes and listen to the frogs, to the wind, to the droplets tapping leaves like fingers drumming on a table. And for a while, that's all there is. And it's enough. The rain settles deeper into the night now, soft and steady. The frogs keep singing, but the chorus fades into the background, a lullaby tucked into the folds of the jungle. You lie still, eyes closed, heart slower. The warmth of the mat beneath you blends with the sound of water against stone, water against leaves, water against the rooftops of every home in the village. It's quiet here, safe. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean silence, but understanding. Everything is in motion, but nothing is in a rush. You imagine the frogs curled into their muddy beds, content,
the corn listening through its roots, the smoke long since faded, still hanging in memory above the fields. And you have become part of the pattern too. Another listener, another breather, another voice, soft and still, stitched into the old story. You don't need to predict anything tonight. The rains came, the frogs sang, and the gods remembered. So let your body sink. Let the rhythm of the rain lull your limbs into stillness. Let the last croak echo gently in your ear like a wordless goodbye. And sleep now. Sleep like the corn beneath the milpa. Sleep like the cenote when the sky is full. Sleep like the old frog in the shrine, dreaming in stone. Sleep with the frogs. Sleep with the rain. Sleep with the sky.